A&P is a target practice. If you can unpack A&P, you will be able to unpack any short story, any play, or any novel. Okay, let's start with some recap. Talk about let's talk about some background information about A&P. Okay, so when exactly A&P was written and published? When exactly A&P was written and published? Class?
1961.
1961. Yes, A&P was published in 19. Do you know exactly where it was published? You remember? You did some research on that. Where? In what magazine? On what newspaper? Remember where? Everybody, you remember where? Remember the name of the magazine?
The New York Post.
It was published in the New Yorker, right? The New Yorker still exists. If you are a subscriber of the New Yorker, okay, you will be able to see a scanned copy of A&P. Yes, it was published in the New Yorker. The New Yorker still exists. In fact, I was a subscriber. I was able to get a scanned copy of the work. So let's go back to this page. Let's scroll down. Okay, I tap A&P. I tap the last name of the author. You do that for each of the work. And for an exercise, do the same. We type the title of the work, and then you after that you type in the title of the author to get some background information about the work. It's important when you have a new literary work, when you want to delve into a new literary work, it's important to get the backstory, okay? To know exactly when the work was published, where it was published, if there was a connection between the work and what was going on at the time or when the work was published. You try to get to know that. That will help you. That will help you understand the work better. You also need to get some information about the author. In fact, you had a chance to research the author. What did you learn about John Updike? What did you learn about John Updike? What did you learn about him?
I can tell you that when they describe the location of the A&P, I am almost 50, and I remember that what sounded like that exact location in Ipswich. So when I looked him up, it was interesting to find that he was living in Ipswich in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned Ipswich. That's going to lead me to talk about something very important. It's why. It's about why did John Updike decide to write A&P? A&P, you see, A&P used to be a supermarket throughout the North Shore area. The same way today, we have a Market Basket. There were A&P store, A&P supermarket in Ipswich, in Salem, and in other places in Massachusetts for that matter. Okay, John Updike wanted to write a short story that captures what was going on in the United States of America in early 1960s. There were rebellions throughout the United States of America. There were political rebellions, for example, Martin Luther King and other people of all stripes, all colors. They were protesting, marching in the street of the United States, marching for civil rights, for civil rights. So these people were called political rebels. Yeah, they were political rebels. There were also in early 1960, there were also young people in the streets of America, protesting. They are protesting against wars. They wanted peace. They were tired of wars, including the war in Vietnam, Furthermore, in early 1960, there was a big counterculture, a big cultural revolution involving young people. These young people were tired of following traditions. They were tired of following blindly their parents and their grandparents' ways. They wanted to be themselves. Yes, they wanted to be themselves. They wanted to wear what they wanted to wear. They wanted to be who they were. There were a big generational fight. Their parents were mad, but they didn't care. They wanted to be themselves. That's when young girls, they started going to the beach wearing bikinis. That's why young men and young women started wearing pants with holes in them. They wanted to be themselves. So there was a keyword. They were called culture. They were called iconoclasts. They wanted to be themselves. They were cultural rebels. You see, rebellions everywhere. I talk about political rebellion. I talk about cultural rebellion. John Updike wanted to capture this moment of rebellion. He didn't know how to start the story. He didn't know how to start. Yes, he didn't know how to start. But one day, think about Ipswich, he was walking in Ipswich. He saw a young girl walking into A&P, this conservative, very conservative store that relied on dress codes. They didn't have to write people should be dressed in a certain. No, everybody knew that it was an institution. Everybody, A&P was a very conservative supermarket. But he saw a young girl walking into A&P wearing nothing but a bathing suit. He had a ha moment. He got inspired. He said to himself, now I know how to write the story. So he went home he started writing the story. So as you can tell, the story is a work of fiction, but it's a work of fiction stemming from reality. As you can tell in the story, instead of one girl, three girls. He had things that he didn't see, but that he had to tap into his creative imagination to create the story in a way that it can convey what he wanted it to convey. Okay, another thing I want to tell you also, if you are very familiar with Salem, Massachusetts, if you are very familiar with Derby Street, but downtown Salem, Massachusetts, where the fire station is. On the other side, there is a Walgreens. That Walgreens, where you see Walgreens, that Walgreens was A&P. A&P was there. A&P was there. So that's and another thing we did also did some research on John Updike as well. This guy was born in Pennsylvania. He came to Harvard to study. He liked Harvard, so he liked the North Shore area so much, he decided not to go back to Pennsylvania. And that's very important, because when you read the story, pay attention to where the story takes place, where the story takes place. Probably when you see that, you're going to say, if John Updike had been living in the South, probably he would have decided to come up with a different location for the story. So that's a little bit of the background information about the short story. One other thing I think we learned, you remember when he died where he died? He died not too long ago. He died in Denver, Massachusetts. Another thing I think, if I can, another thing you learn, this guy was a very prolific author. What did I say? He was a very prolific author. That's a big word. The word prolific, okay? Let me see what I can put on the screen. He was a very prolific author.
Prolific.
Okay, you can see the definition right there. When you say someone is very prolific, what does that mean? He was a very prolific author. That means he wrote many short stories, many novels, many plays. And we got evidence of that. Remember, if I'm going to recap some of the things we found out. If you let's tap again. A&P Updike. Okay, 1 second. A&P Updike. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit. Scroll down a little bit. Scroll down. Scroll down. And let's click on his name to get the detail. Let's scroll down. 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 Let's keep going. I'm going to return to find the list of some of his works. Let's scroll down. Everybody, what do you see? Look at all the novels the guy wrote. Look at all the books the guy wrote. Look at all the short story collections. All the short story collection. So the word prolific applies to him. He was a prolific. He was a prolific author. The same way today we're talking about Stephen King as a prolific novelist. John Updike was a prolific novelist. He was also a prolific poet, a prolific short story writer. He was a very well-known author. So look at that team. Now, what we're going to do, in order to come up with claim about the story, we have to, besides background info about the story, we have to read the story 100%. Okay, we should not leave any stone unturned. Once we get a deep understanding of the story, we'll be able to analyze it. We're able to come up with claims, claims about the short story. So first, I'm going to put on the screen. So I'm going to give me 1 second. I'm going here, okay, right here, to see to get a copy of the story. I got a copy for that. But before that, remember, we had a chance to go over some key things that should help you understand any works of literature. We go over any work of fiction. We had to go over elements of essentials of fiction, including setting, theme, plot, etc., etc. We also had to learn about literary devices, including metaphors that people who watch a story plays in the works of literature and the works of fiction use to give power to the work, to create this work well. So as we go over A&P as a class, if we encounter these things, we were able to take a pause and discuss them to a great extent. But the main goal, remember, at the end of the class, for us to come up with past claims, great claim about the work, okay, great thesis statement that could be useful for writing literary essays in A&P. But as we do so, you have to be reminded that you're not required to write your second essay, your short story analysis essay on A&P per se. You are free to choose any other short story, any play, or any novel to analyze for a short story. So A&P is just serving as a target practice. So if you understand how to unpack A&P, how to analyze A&P, you'll be able to take any short story, any play, or any novel and do likewise. Okay, and we're going to get a copy. I'm going to put the copy of A&P on the screen for you. So for that, we're going here, and then we're going to module 2, the short story module. I'm going to click on that, and right here, we're going to see the featured short story. That in the short stories, we're going to analyze together as a class. So click on that, and the first one is the A&P version of that. I'm going to click on A&P. I put the number paragraph for you, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and that's very important because when the times after we finish reading A&P, to try to understand the work, when it's time for you to do deep analysis, to come with claims, you'll be able to, tell me how you're able to support this claim, what pieces of evidence from the work. So you can say, okay, it's in paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 5. That's why I put, I decided to number the paragraph for you. Now, what I would like you to do, I would like one person or more than one person to be willing to read the short story. And the whole class will pay attention, the whole class can take notes, and then after the person finished reading the whole story, we can focus on specific parts, and it is my hope that will allow us to have a firm understanding. We're not going to leave any stone unturned. We have to understand this short story very well. If we understand it well, we can analyze it well. We can come up with claims about it. Okay, who would like to read the short story for me, for the whole class? Who would like to read the short story? I want a volunteer for now, or more than one. Who would like to read the A and B? If you like to read it, turn on your microphone and start reading. Is there any volunteer? Who would like to read A and B? Okay, let me tell you, if you don't want to, so I'm going to do, I have an audio version of the work in the background. Okay, someone, let me see if I can get it. Someone going to, 1 second, read it for you, and then pay attention. Pay attention. The work is displayed on the screen. Watch carefully as the person is going to read it for you. One second, I'm going to grab it. A little bit advertisement.
It's mine's work. Do you really think it's a mine in there? No, they're over by the bread.
Once again. Okay.
A and P by John Updike.
Pay attention, everybody.
These 3 girls in nothing but bathing suits. I'm in the 3rd checkout slot with my back to the door, so I don't see them until they're over by the bread. The one that caught my eye first was the one in the plaid green 2-piece. She was a chunky kid with a good tan and a sweet, broad, soft-looking can with those 2 crescents of white just under it, where the sun never seems to hit, at the top of the back of her legs. I stood there with my hand on a box of hi-ho crackers, trying to remember if I rang it up or not. I ring it up again, and the customer starts giving me hell. She's one of these cash register watchers, a witch about 50 with rouge on her cheekbones and no eyebrows, and I know it made her day to trip me up. She'd been watching cash registers for 40 years and probably never seen a mistake before. By the time I got her feathers smoothed and her goodies into a bag, she gives me a little snort in passing. If she'd been born at the right time, they would have burned her over in Salem. By the time I get her on her way, the girls had circled around the bread and were coming back without a push cart, back my way along the counters, in the aisle between the checkouts and the special bins. They didn't even have shoes on. There was this chunky one with the 2-piece. It was bright green and the seams on the bra were still sharp and her belly was still pretty pale, so I guessed she just got it, the suit. There was this one with one of those chubby berry faces, the lips all bunched together under her nose. This one and a tall one with black hair that hadn't quite frizzed right, and one of these sunburns right across under the eyes, and a chin that was too long. You know, the kind of girl other girls think is very striking and attractive, but never quite makes it, as they very well know, which is why they like her so much. And then the third one that wasn't quite so tall. She was the queen. She kind of led them, the other 2 peeking around and making their shoulders round. She didn't look around, not this queen. She just walked straight on slowly on these long white prima donna legs. She came down a little hard on her heels, as if she didn't walk in her bare feet that much, putting down her heels and then letting the weight move along to her toes, as if she was testing the floor with every step, putting a little deliberate extra action into it. You never know for sure how girls' minds work. Do you really think it's a mind in there, or just a little buzz like a bee in a glass jar? But you got the idea. She had talked the other two into coming in here with her, and now she was showing them how to do it. Walk slow and hold yourself straight. She had on a kind of dirty pink, beige maybe, I don't know, bathing suit with a little nubble all over it, and what got me, the straps were down. They were off her shoulders, looped loose around the cool tops of her arms, and I guess as a result, the suit had slipped a little on her, so all around the top of the cloth there was this shining rim. If it hadn't been there, you wouldn't have known there could have been anything wider than those shoulders. With the straps pushed off, there was nothing between the top of the suit. It's just her, this clean, bare plane of the top of her chest down from the shoulder bones like a dented sheet of metal tilted in the light. I mean, it was more than pretty. She had sort of oaky hair that the sun and salt had bleached, done up in a bun that was unraveling, and a kind of prim face. Walking into the A&P with your straps down, I suppose that's the only kind of face you can have. She held her head so high, her neck, coming up out of those white shoulders, looked kind of stretched, but I didn't mind. The longer her neck was, the more of her there was. She must have felt in the corner of her eye me and over my shoulder Stokesy in the second slot watching, but she didn't tip. Not this queen. She kept her eyes moving across the racks and stopped and turned so slow it made my stomach rub the inside of my apron and buzzed to the other two, kind of huddled against her for relief, and they all three of them went up the cat and dog food, breakfast cereal, macaroni, rice, raisin, seasoning spread, spaghetti, soft drinks, crackers, and cookies aisle. From the third slot, I looked straight up this aisle to the meat counter, and I watched them all the way. The fat one with the tan sort of fumbled with the cookies, but on second thought she put the package back. The sheep pushing their carts down the aisle. The girls were walking against the usual traffic. Not that we have one-way signs or anything. Were pretty hilarious. You could see them when Queenie's white shoulders dawned on them, kind of jerk or hop or hiccup, but their eyes snapped back to their own baskets and on they pushed. I bet you could set off dynamite in an A&P and the people would by and large keep reaching and checking oatmeal off their lists and muttering, let me see, there was a third thing, began with A, asparagus, no, yes, applesauce, or whatever it is they do mutter. But there was no doubt this jiggled them. A few house slaves and pin curlers even looked around after pushing their carts past to make sure what they had seen was correct. You know, it's one thing to have a girl in a bathing suit down on the beach where, what with the glare, nobody can look at each other much anyway, and another thing in the cool of the A&P under the fluorescent lights against all those stacked packages, with her feet paddling along naked over our checkerboard green and cream rubber tile floor. Oh, Daddy, Stuxy said beside me, I feel so faint. Darling, I said, hold me tight. Stokesy's married, with 2 babies chalked up on his fuselage already, but as far as I can tell, that's the only difference. He's 22, and I was 19 this April. Is it done? He asks, the responsible married man finding his voice. I forgot to say, he thinks he's going to be manager some sunny day, maybe in 1990 when it's called the Great Alexandrov and Petrushki Tea Company or something. What he meant was, our town is 5 miles from a beach with a big summer colony out on the point, but we're right in the middle of town, and the women generally put on a shirt or shorts or something before they get out of the car into the street. And anyway, these are usually women with 6 children and varicose veins mapping their legs, and nobody, including them, could care less. As I say, we're right in the middle of town, and if you stand at our front doors, you can see 2 banks and the Congregational Church and the newspaper store, and 3 real estate offices and about 27 old freeloaders tearing up Central Street because the sewer's broken again. It's not as if we're on the Cape. We're north of Boston, and there's people in this town haven't seen the ocean for 20 years. The girls had reached the meat counter and were asking McMahon something. He pointed, they pointed, and they shuffled out of sight behind a pyramid of Diet Delight peaches. All that was left for us to see was the old McMahon patting his mouth and looking at their joints. Poor kids. I began to feel sorry for them. They couldn't help it. Now here comes the sad part of the story. At least my family says it's sad, but I don't think it's sad myself. The store's pretty empty, it being Thursday afternoon, so there was nothing much to do except lean on the register and wait for the girls to show up again. The whole store was like a pinball machine, and I didn't know which tunnel they'd come out of. After a while, they'd come around out of the far aisle, around the light bulbs, records at discount of the Caribbean Six, or Tony Martin Sings, or some such gunk you wonder they waste the wax on, 6 packs of candy bars, and plastic toys done up in cellophane that fall apart when a kid looks at them anyway. Around they come, Queenie still leading the way and holding a little gray jar in her hand. Slots 3 through 7 are unmanned, and I could see her wandering between Stokes and me. But Stokesy, with his usual luck, draws an old party in baggy gray pants who stumbles up with 4 giant cans of pineapple juice. What do these bums do with all that pineapple juice, I've often asked myself. So the girls come to me. Queenie puts down the jar, and I take it into my fingers icy cold. Kingfish fancy herring snacks and pure sour cream, 49 cents. Now her hands are empty, not a ring or a bracelet, bare as God made them, and I wonder where the money's coming from. Still, with that prim look, she lifts a folded dollar bill out of the hollow at the center of her nubbled pink top. The jar went heavy in my hand. Really, I thought that was so cute. Then everybody's luck begins to run out. Lenkel comes in from haggling with a truck full of cabbages on the lot and is about to scuttle into the door marked manager, behind which he hides all day when the girls touch his eye. Lengel's pretty dreary, teaches Sunday school and the rest, but he doesn't miss that much. He comes over and says, "Girls, this isn't the beach." Queenie blushes, though maybe it's just a brush of sunburn I was noticing for the first time, now that she was so close. "My mother asked me to pick up a jar of herring snacks." Her voice kind of startled me, the way voices do when you see the people first, coming out so flat and dumb, yet kind of tony, too, the way it ticked over. Pick up, and snacks. All of a sudden, I slid right down her voice into her living room. Her father and the other men were standing around in ice cream coats and bow ties, and the women were in sandals, picking up herring snacks on toothpicks off a big plate, and they were all holding drinks the color of water with olives and sprigs of mint in them. When my parents have somebody over, they get lemonade, and it's a real racy affair, Schlitz in tall glasses with, "They'll do it every time," cartoons stenciled on. "That's all right," Lengel said, "but this isn't the beach." His repeating this struck me as funny, as if it had just occurred to him, and he had been thinking all these years the A&P was a great big dune, and he was the head lifeguard. He didn't like my smiling. As I say, he doesn't miss much, but he concentrates on giving the girls that sad Sunday school superintendent stare. Queenie's blush is no sunburn now, and the plump one in plaid, that I like better from the back, a really sweet can, pipes up. "We weren't doing any shopping, we just came in for one thing." "That makes no difference," Lengel tells her, and I could see from the way his eyes went that he hadn't noticed she was wearing a two-piece before. "We want you decently dressed when you come in here." "We are decent," Queenie says suddenly, her lower lip pushing, getting sore now that she remembers her place, a place from which the crowd that runs the A&P must look pretty crummy. Fancy herring snacks flashed in her very blue eyes. "Girls, I don't want to argue with you. After this, come in here with your shoulders covered. It's our policy." He turns his back. "That's policy for you. Policy is what the kingpins want. What the others want is juvenile delinquency." All this while, the customers have been showing up with their carts, but, sheep seeing a scene, they had all bunched up on Stokesy, who shook open a paper bag as gently as peeling a peach, not wanting to miss a word. I could feel in the silence everybody getting nervous, most of all Lengel, who asks me, "Sammy, have you rung up this purchase?" I thought and said, "No," but it wasn't about that I was thinking. I go through the punches, 4-9, GROC, TOT, It's more complicated than you think, and after you do it often enough, it begins to make a little song that you hear words to. In my case, hello, ding, there, you gung, happy, people, splat, the splat being the drawer flying out. I uncreased the bill, tenderly as you may imagine. It just having come from between the two smoothest scoops of vanilla I had ever known were there, and pass a half and a penny into her narrow pink palm, and nestle the herrings in a bag and twist its neck and hand it over, all the time thinking. The girls, and who'd blame them, are in a hurry to get out, so I say, I quit, to Langle quick enough for them to hear, hoping they'll stop and watch me, their unsuspected hero. They keep right on going into the electric eye. The door flies open and they flicker across the lot to their car, Queenie and Plaid and big tall Goonie Goonie. Not that as raw material she was so bad, leaving me with Lengle and a kink in his eyebrow. Did you say something, Sammy? I said I quit. I thought you did. You didn't have to embarrass them. It was they who were embarrassing us. I started to say something that came out fiddle-de-doo. It's a saying of my grandmother's, and I know she would have been pleased. I don't think you know what you're saying, Langle said. I know you don't, I said, but I do. I pull the bow at the back of my apron and start shrugging it off my shoulders. A couple of customers that had been heading for my slot begin to knock against each other like scared pigs in a chute. Langle sighs and begins to look very patient and old and gray. He's been a friend of my parents for years. Sammy, you don't want to do this to your mom and dad, he tells me. It's true, I don't. But it seems to me that once you begin a gesture, it's fatal not to go through with it. I fold the apron, Sammy stitched in red on the pocket and put it on the counter and drop the bow tie on top of it. The bow tie is theirs, if you've ever wondered. You'll feel this for the rest of your life, Langle says, and I know that's true too, but remembering how he made that pretty girl blush makes me so scrunchy inside. I punch the no sale tab and the machine whirs, people, and the drawer splats out. One advantage to this scene taking place in summer, I can follow this up with a clean exit. There's no fumbling around getting your coat and galoshes. I just saunter into the electric eye in my white shirt that my mother ironed the night before, and the door heaves itself open, and outside the sunshine is skating around on the asphalt. I look around for my girls, but they're gone, of course. There wasn't anybody but some young married screaming with their children about some candy they didn't get by the door of a powdered blue Falcon station wagon. Looking back in the big windows, over the bags of peat moss and aluminum lawn furniture stacked on the pavement, I could see Langle in my place in the slot, checking the sheep through. His face was dark and gray and his back stiff, as if he'd have just had an injection of iron, and my stomach kind of fell as I felt how hard the world was going to be to me hereafter.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time to focus on key part of the story before we decide to discuss about claim about it. Well, at the beginning, one thing I want to tell you now. A long time ago, there was a guy by the name of Aristotle. He used to live in Greece. He was a philosopher. He said every great story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. This short story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The question is, the first question, why the beginning? What is the purpose of the beginning of the story? What is included in the beginning? Usually in the beginning of short story, you get some clues as to where the story takes place, when the story takes place, some of the people involved in the story. the point of view of the story, whether it's a first person story, or if you see I or we, first person story, or I'm just being told by character in the story, or the story is a third person story, or you also some good story usually in the beginning you can see some type of tension to grab the reader's attention, some types of attention grabber to make the reader want to keep reading the story. The beginning, in a nutshell, provides enough background information to the reader so that the reader can understand what's going to happen in the middle of the story. In the middle of the story, that's where the main action takes place. Things get more and more complicated for the protagonist of the story. Okay, the story is rising until the story reaches its highest point, its climax. When you see that falling action, see conflict, you ask yourself, how the conflict going to be resolved, what's going to happen, some type of resolution, etc., etc., etc. Every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the first paragraph, I talk about the beginning. What do you see? Can you see some of the people involved in the story in the beginning and in the first paragraph? Can you see some of the people involved in the story in the first paragraph?
Yeah, you're introduced to the narrator, 3 girls, and then an older woman who's a customer.
Exactly. You can see 3 girls, you don't know their name yet, but you have to read the story to know their names. You see the story is a first person. There is an I, a narrator in the story telling the story, and you can see a customer as well, and that's very important. You can see at the beginning a certain clash right here. You can see 2 generations. On one side, the young generation, remember what was going on in the country in the early 1960s. There was on one side, young people wanted change. And the other side, their parents, they wanted to keep the status quo. Older parents, they wanted to keep the status quo. You can see that to some extent in the beginning of the show. You can see something going to happen. You can see the generational difference. One side, 3 girls, and I in the story, the narrator. You can see you get also some information as to where the story takes place. Where in the beginning, what do you see as to where the story takes place? Where does the story take place? Remember setting of the stories, the setting. Remember, setting can be physical setting. There is also setting as time when the story takes place, and also setting as cultural context. So there may be some clues as to the culture, whether the story takes place in a conservative place or in a liberal place. So in this first paragraph, you can see the story take place where. You have to go deeper in the story to get details about all the aspects of the set, but you have enough in this paragraph to know exactly, to some extent, about part of the setting of the story. Where does the story take place? According to the first paragraph.
In a grocery store.
In a grocery store called A&P. But you don't know where the grocery store is located, in what town, in what country. You don't know, but you have to read the rest of the story. So the beginning give you a lot already, as I sort of pointed out. The beginning set the stage for what's going to happen in the middle of the story. That's where the main action takes place. So you have read the story. even if so what's the name of the narrator? What's the name of the narrator of the story? Who is the protagonist of the story? What is his name?
Sammy.
Sammy. You get to know his name until later on in the story. But you get a lot, before you get to know his name, you get a lot of information about him. That's very important. Usually in stories, you get a lot of information about all the major characters in the story. Okay? As opposed to minor characters. Minor characters are important, but you get more detail about the major characters. So in this story, you can see there are several major characters. One of them is Sammy, the narrator of the story, the person telling the story. What are the major characters in the story according to you? Besides Sammy? Besides Sammy, what are the major characters? Besides Sammy the narrator is a major character. What are the major characters in the story?
Stokesy.
Stokesy is a major character. Who else?
Langle.
Lango, the manager. What about the girls?
Queenie.
The three girls.
I don't know the names of the other girls.
Okay, you don't know the names. But we read it. Who saw the name? The leader of the three girls. What's the name of the leader of the three girls in the story?
Queenie.
Queenie. And also, if you go down further, you can see the name in capital letters, the name of all the other three girls. So once you know the major characters in the story, you can identify the protagonist of the story. When I say protagonist, what do I mean by that? When I say the major character, who is the major character in the story? Who is the major character? What's the name again of the major character?
Sammy.
Sammy. You see at the beginning, you can feel Sammy is young. What evidence you have from, even if you don't know his name, you don't know detail about his age at the beginning, what evidence you have? What evidence you have in the first few paragraphs of the story to assume that is a young person? What evidence you have for you to ask what?
About the girls.
Say that again.
The way that he talks about the girls.
The way he talks about the girls. You know, mature people don't talk that way. You know, the way he described, does he describe the girl in glorious terms, or do you think he described them in not so glorious terms?
He wasn't so nice.
He's not so nice about them. That's typical of many teenagers. You know, so that's very important. We should you get some clues. And also, I'm talking about Sammy, but there's another thing. Yes, you get in. You have later on in the story, you know his age. How old is he? How old is he?
He's 19.
He's 19. You have to go way down to know that this guy is only 19. His friend Stokesy is 21. Okay, he's only 19. You get a lot of detail, but he's not married yet. But he's 19 years old. There is another thing I forgot to tell about, like the setting. Beside the story take place in a grocery store, is there evidence even from the first few paragraphs of the story as to more detail, more evidence about the setting of the story? Do you have evidence as to the season where the story take place? What season? What season? And which season? Summer. You don't see the word summer at the beginning of the story, but you get pieces of evidence that tell you the story take place in the summer months. So what evidence you have to say that the story take place in the summer months?
The girls in their bathing suits.
They were in the bathing suit. And if you go down further, you will see in some of the paragraphs, and one of the paragraphs that they were barefooted. You cannot do that during the time. They're clear evidence. But later on, at the end, you see the word summer. But before, no, you pay attention to all these details. And you get even more details. For in this story, a setting is really overemphasized. Emphasized extensively, I should say. You can see exactly the day where the story takes place. You can see a lot of detail about, and also there are some clues as to the cultural context. Is this story taking place in a conservative society or in a liberal society? Is this story taking place in a liberal society or in a liberal town or in a conservative town?
Conservative.
Conservative. Why do you say conservative?
Because later on in the story, the manager gets upset because they're not following the dress code, and a lot of people were looking at the girls, giving them not the kind of size.
Exactly. It's in a place that relies on written social norm. Okay, everybody must follow these norms blindly. That's why in the story you can see like the old people in the story. Sammy called them sheep. Sheep, that's a metaphor. One of the figure of species you have learned. Call them sheep. Why do you think Sammy called them sheep? When we call someone sheep, what do you think that refers to?
They're scared.
They're scared. Besides being scared, what do sheep do? Are they leaders or followers?
Mindless followers.
Followers, these people, these older people. Remember, that's what happened in the early 1960s. These people, they follow tradition. They follow them blindly. But young people, what they do? They want change sometimes. They want change. Actually, there was a line, maybe what time to church on the story that mentioned that. That talk about older folks, they want to follow rules, and young people, what they want to do, they want to break them all. They want a new world. They want to. There was a clear line. Actually, well, that's one of the questions probably I may have for you to kind of like tell me some of the lines in the story that caught your attention. Yeah, the story, you can obviously the story takes place in a very conservative society that rely on rule that people must follow. Your older people, they follow them blindly. Younger people want to break them. And that's exactly what was going on in this country and the counter culture in early 1960 and United. So as you read the story, you can say things getting more and more complicated at the beginning of the story. The customers see the girl in bathing suit. They want to say something. They don't say anything. And then you keep reading further. There was an old guy in the story. His name starts with an M, Macmillan. Okay, the guy at the counter. You can see his mouth. He's trying to say something to the girl, an older guy. He doesn't say it. But finally, in the story, someone decides to confront the girls. Who is that someone who decides to confront the girls? What is his name? What is name? What is name of the person? Go to paragraph 13. What is the name? Lengo. Who is Lengo in the story? Who is Lengo? What is one the story? Who is he?
The manager.
The manager.
The manager of ANP. The manager of the concert. The Lengo confront them. What does Lengo tell them? What does Lengo tell them? What does he say? What does he say to the girl? What does he say to the girl?
He wants them to dress appropriately.
He wants them to dress appropriately. He said, this is not the beach. You're supposed to dress decently, you know. And then finally, he asked Sammy to kind of like wing everything. He want the girl to be out of the store. You know what I mean? Sammy is mad at what he sees. And what does Sammy do? What does Sammy do? Sammy becomes so mad, you know. We're gonna reach the climax of the story. What does Sammy do?
He quits.
He quit his job. He quit his job. And the manager tried to convince him to change his mind. He says, no, no. He quit his job. Now, I think we have summarized the story in a very effective way. Okay. We have touched on the essence of the story. This guy at the end, okay, quit his job. So let's come up with claims. When finished reading a short story, when in an active way, you have to come up with claims about the work. You have to come up with claims. You have to come about with statement, opinion of the work that are debatable. Some people will agree with what you say, other people will disagree. But what's important is that you have to be able to support your claim using evidence, some evidence from the work. Most depending on the claim that your evidence from the work to support you. So it doesn't matter what I think, what other people think. What matters is that whatever claim you come up with, you have to support them. So speaking of claim, one of the questions you may have that will lead to a claim about ANP, and the claim will lead to an essay on AP, because the claim, it could be like about it would be your thesis statement, the last statement of the introduction, you know. So to come up with a claim, you're supposed to have a compelling question in your mind, a question that defies easy answer, a question that leads to debatable answers. So one of the questions that I have for you that could lead to a claim is, why you cannot a great essay on that. Maybe your essay may want to answer this question: why does, you see, I'm using present tense. That's what you do when you analyze, summarize, or analyze the work of literature. Even if the work is written in the past tense, you have to use present tense. Okay. Literary present tense. They call that literary present tense. Why does Sammy quit his job? Does he quit his job to impress the girl, or do you think he quit his job for a reason beyond that? Why does Sammy quit his job? The answer you come up with will be a claim. Why does Sammy quit his job? Class, what do you think? Why does he quit?
To prove a point.
What point? What point does he want to prove?
That he was treating those girls badly.
Okay, he was treating the girl bad. You think, yeah, you can use evidence from the work to support that. But also, you can say, you know, some people may think that this guy, as the protagonist of the story, quit his job to impress the girl, but a deeper reading of the work shows, okay, he quit his job for something bigger than that. You can argue that this guy has wanted all along to leave this boring place, ANP, to leave this small town, to go to a bigger place, for where his dream, the dream that he had for himself, to come true. We got evidence of that. We got evidence of that. Remember, in one the story, he mentioned his friend Stokesy. His friend Stokesy's dream is to become the next manager of ANP someday. That's all he can dream in this small town. But Sammy, Stokesy is a fault to Sammy in that regard. But Sammy wants something bigger for himself. He wants to get out of this place. So he take advantage of what the girl does, of the great move that the girl does, made by breaking the dress code of AMP to do something he has wanted to do all along. So you can make a case, not everybody will agree with you, you can make a case that Sammy, that's a claim you can have, you can make a case that Sammy quit his job, most importantly for that reason. So he knows the consequences, but he thinks it's the right time to do what he has wanted to do all along. He quits his job, now he can get out of this small town to go to a bigger place where he will have his dream come true. So basically, they can have different answers to the question, but the key is for whatever the claim is, it has to be supported. Okay. Now, other questions that you may have that will lead to a great claim about the work, a great thesis statement, in case you want to write an essay on NP, usually it's to come about the theme. That's one of the elements of fiction, themes. When you finish with your work, you have to figure out the themes of the work, the lessons from the work, the major issues and the work, the theme. What about the themes of the work? Can you make a case that action, if you ask this question, what are some of the themes of the work? Can you make a case that choice and consequences, or action and consequences, is one of the themes of ANP? Can you make a case for that? Yes or no? Can you make a case that choice and consequences is one of the themes of ANP? How would you support that if you make that case? How would you support that? How would you support that action and consequences is one of the themes of ANP?
You could say that treating the girls badly cost Langle a good employee. You could say that acting out of something small made a kid lose his job.
Mm-hmm. And what about the girl? Are there consequences for the girls? The two girls? The action, they come into ANP were in bathing suit, on a bathing suit. What are the consequences for them? What are the consequences for them? What type of consequences do they suffer by coming with ANP just wearing bathing suit?
They got embarrassed.
They get embarrassed. They get reprimanded by the manager, and before that, they get reprimanded silently by the customer. So action and consequence. And I'm going to get a step further than that. There was another bigger theme. Remember the journal Updike wanted to write the story to convey the rebellions that were taking place in the United States in early 1960. Could you make a case that rebellion against social norms, everything? Can you make a case that rebellions is a major theme of the story? Hello? How would you support that?
Yes, because they went into a conservative store in bathing suits and no shoes.
So the girls are rebels, yes. Okay, yes. What about Sammy? Is Sammy a rebel too?
Well, I mean, he quit his
What the rebellion against? What is
he's
it?
the manager and quit his job.
Yes. So you can make a case that the three girls and Sammy's they are rebels. Yes. You can make a case for that. So you can let me speaking of claim. I have another question. Once you identify the protagonist of the story, you have to identify the antagonist. Remember some sort of conflict in the story. You have to identify antagonists of the story. you know, so the protagonist of the story is Sammy. But what about the antagonist? You know, some story have different type of conflict. There is man versus man versus nature, and conflict can be internal as well. Sometimes, if the story is about a police officer against a group of gangsters, the police officer is the protagonist, the group of gangsters is the antagonist. When you see that, you see the conflict, the external conflict, you say who's going to prevail. Sometimes some story is man versus nature. For example, a captain on the raging sea, there was a hurricane, the captain in a small boat trying to survive. That's man versus nature. Sometimes the conflict is internal. The protagonist has to make a decision. A is bad, B, but he has to make a decision. We try to figure out which decision is going to make. In ANP, the protagonist is Sammy. What about the antagonist? Do you think the antagonist is the manager, Lengo, or you think the antagonist is the conservative store per se, the supermarket, the conservative supermarket per se? What's your opinion on that? That can be a good question to claim. What do you think? I mean, there is no right or wrong answer. So what do you think? You think the antagonist is the manager who put Sammy, or you think the protagonist is A and B?
It's the store.
The antagonist is the store. Why you say the store?
Because of their rules.
Aha. Yes. Actually, I agree. The antagonist of the story, that's why the title is A and P, is the store. That's the store. Lengo, the manager, is what an employee is part of in A&P, is smaller than the store, the supermarket, this conservative store. Is the store that get in the way of Sammy's bigger dream. You see, so the struggle, there was a struggle. There has been a struggle. So Sammy quit the store, this store for a chance to live his life the way he wanted to live, to go for his bigger dream. His bigger dream is not to become the manager. So the store being blocked. Finally, Sammy get a chance to make a move. To get action, he decides to quit his job. He knows, remember we talk about action and consequences? If Sammy knows the short-term consequences and the long-term consequences. The short-term consequences, as he says at the end, is going to be broke. But think about the long-term consequences. The long-term consequences, by leaving the store, he'll be out of the small town. And by being out of the small town, he will be in a bigger universe where he will be somebody bigger than the next manager of VNP. Speaking of it, there's something I want to show you. Remember when you went on site, probably the last thing I want to focus on that will nail it for you. Remember when you type in ANP Updike, I saw something very interesting. ANP Updike. I saw two claims. I'm going to show you where they are. ANP Updike. I'm going to scroll down. Two claims from two highly educated people. But different claims. Let's look at this. That's how we're going to end. If we look this very carefully, I'm going to make it probably smaller for people to see, or let me see if I can do that. Okay. Let me see, smaller. 1 second. Okay. If it's smaller, you won't be able to see. Let me put it. I'm going to change it. Okay, right here. Okay, let me see. Okay, right here. Okay, two guys. One, you cannot use a site Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is a big icebreaker. You can find sources inside Wikipedia you can cite. For example, you can see number, that's a source you can cite. There are two guys. After ANP was published, they wrote articles on ANP. But the articles they wrote was about claim about A&P. Look at what this guy has to say. This guy, whose last name was Porter, look at what he said. Read this carefully. He said the main character talk about Sammy, okay, about quitting his job, what he rebel. He become a rebel against A&P, against all A&P represent. For him, that's a great piece of work. That's showing a young man that's had guts, a young man that stand for what he believes in. He want to live his life meaningfully. So he quit his job. That's according to this guy. But look at another one. Another one, Peden. He wrote an article earlier. You can see the date when the article was published in 1964. A few years after the publication of A&P, look at what he said. He said A&P is a nonsense. It's well written, but content-wise is nonsense because it's all about a young man interested into and trigger embedded. These are claims. We can write in a essay starting with one claim or starting with the other. And there's speaking about claim, there are the things you can do. Remember, you can write an essay. One question you may have about a claim, whether the story reflect what was going on, really reflect what was going on in the country in 1960. So you can write an essay responding to that. Okay, whether the story was relevant to 1961, you can say this, or you can even add whether the story is relevant today. You can make a case that this story by John Updike, A&P, was relevant, okay, to the time when it was written, and is still relevant today. So you'll be able to show the relevance of the story to 1961 and also show the relevance of the story. There are so many other things there are so many other questions you can have. You can ask a question, what are the takeaways from A&P? The answer to a question will be a claim, because some people will have different claims. Not everybody will agree with you. Or what are the major lessons from it? Oh, the last one, the last one. Some works of literature are great. Not all, I say not all works of literature are great. So one of the questions you may have is A&P a great work of literature? That can lead to a claim. Great work of literature, they're excellent content-wise. They're also excellent. They are also excellent style-wise, the way they are put together, the way they are written. Well, if this question is in your mind, you can write an essay agreeing that A&P is excellent content-wise and also excellent style-wise. That's a very debatable statement. That's a claim. You will have to defend it. You know, sometimes we say, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So what you say is the content. How you say it is the language you use. The language you use, how you frame it. So it's all about claim. So in a nutshell, claim is stem from compelling question you have. So today, I think everybody understand how to come with claim possible. I mean, there was a universe of a possibility, but we have come up with some great claim. So next class, we'll be able to construct, I will be able to show you how to construct an introduction for any work of fiction, any literary work. And for the introduction, we're going to use one of the claims we created today. Okay, everybody, that's all for today. And I will shoot you an email telling you what you're supposed to do for next class. One of the things I will be able to tell you is to start doing some research on a second short story. Is listed on the website. A second short story is the story of an hour back at Chopin. Follow the same step you followed to get back the backstory about ANP. Follow the same step to get the backstory of the story of an hour, and then do some research on Ketchup as well, and be ready to share what you have found with the rest of the class. That's all for today, everybody. Take care. Thank you for participation. Bye-bye.